The chase for a championship is well underway as we're here for another edition of 4th and 4, the Belly Up Sports pregame show covering all things NFL before we get you in this week's action. Obviously, it's still the playoffs, and of course, we're still having Saturday and Sunday contests, so 2 down, 2 to go. We're going to be discussing all 4 in some capacity today, along with a few other tidbits, of course, as we move towards the Super Bowl. Zach Heilman in here alongside with Kelcey and DJ from High Low Sports. Guys, thanks for, of course, coming in. And every week I love doing this stuff with you two. This has been an awesome year. Still have a few weeks, of course, to go, and we got even better plans ahead. We might tease that at the end of the show for what we could be doing. But how you guys been? I mean, Saturday, just what are the odds? Both upsets happen to fall in dramatic fashions, of course. Some games we'll be talking about for at least the next year or so.
Dear NFL, it's okay to draft a kicker if we've learned anything from yesterday. That is all.
Yes, it is.
Or pick a 60-year-old veteran that still got it.
That works too. And look, I mean, what are the odds? Not just away teams getting the upset, but they both end in special teams being the important part of the game.
I know. That is what's amazing, is that you have that asset. I mean, we could talk about just alone how we can say special teams won the game for San Francisco in Lambeau Field. I will save that, though, as I want to get started from early to latest. Let's go step back a little farther here, as yesterday, about 4:30 Eastern time, we had the Bengals visiting the Tennessee Titans at Nissan Field. We saw a team that, for the Tennessee, had its roster loaded back up and healthy on paper. I myself picked them mainly because of the fact that you see that they all were healthy and had most of that unit back together. Mike Vrabel has had an excellent year, but one thing we've been talking is that the Bengals, they're scrappy, and when they get hot and they hit a streak right, much like any good wild card team coming into a playoff run like this, anything's possible for these guys. Sky was the limit, and it happened to be falling just right, and they got just what they needed out of going against the Titans, especially on the defensive side.
It was definitely an odd type of game, considering they got 9 sacks, you got a takeaway, you ran for 140 yards, and you lost. It kind of kills you. You threw three interceptions as well. Mediocre day offensively. Derrick Henry clearly wasn't 100% and still had, 20 carries, something like that as well, too. Joe Burrow was basically getting under full-fledged assault. It looked like Eli Manning in the 2011 NFC Championship game, where every single play he was pulling dirt out of his face. Jamar Chase was... It's weird to say he was in check when he still had 100 receiving yards, but more than half of them came on a single play in the first quarter that resulted in a field goal attempt. But they kept him relatively under control, and they still found a way to win. Their defense, you mentioned, they made just enough plays. That late interception, all it took was one play from Joe Burrow. And Evan McPherson, can we crown him now? As a rookie, walking onto the field, look after the timeout, looks at Joe Burrow and says, looks like I can go to the AFC Championship, boys, before cracking a 52-yard field goal. Like, we need to get a couple of wheelbarrows for not only for Joe Burrow, but also Evan McPherson. It was a fantastic play. It was a fantastic game by all the young players. And they weirdly reminiscent of Kansas City a couple years ago, and they burst onto the scene. Just came in out of nowhere and started just going after everybody. So look for I'm curious to see who they're going to play next week. It's going to be a really fun matchup regardless of who they get matched up with.
Yeah, sure. Look, that game was so much fun. I mean, really, like everything about it was entertaining. Down to the fact that you're watching Joe Burrow take literally fire at this point in time from every defensive lineman. Like every single defensive lineman had a shot at Joe Burrow at least once in this game. And that's including their rotational defensive linemen. And yet he still fought through it. And this is the first game we've seen him really get tested with that knee since the injury. And this was like, talk about some of the generational quarterbacks we've seen. None of them have really faced the same adversity that Joe Burrow has so far in his career. Talk about that major knee injury, coming back from it now. Now he's led his team to the playoffs when they probably shouldn't have this year. Let's be completely honest. Everybody looks at the offensive line and is like, how did they do it? Well, the fact is somehow Joe Burrow is a magician, and you have 17,000 weapons out there that learn how to run a 5-yard stop pattern. And thank God for that, because if it's not for that, this game is probably a wash for Tennessee. But on the other side, Tennessee, I mean, we got a master class in out coaching yourself. If you're Tennessee, like you just outthought yourself every step of the way. Because first play of the game, you get Derrick Henry back for the first time since week 8. What do? Throw a 17-yard stop route to Julio Jones instead of handing the ball off to Derrick Henry. Because you know what? That's what they're expecting, right? They're expecting you hand it off to Derrick Henry. Well, guess what? It backfired. You throw a pick, first play of the game. And it was just like all downhill from there. I mean, it was just like, what are you guys doing? Just like stop overthinking it. Just do what you do. You're the Tennessee Titans. Your MO is beating the crap out of the other team, and you didn't do it. Like you tried to do it through the middle quarters, and that's when you were the most effective. But then you stopped, and you went back to a pass play again. And it's like, I just at the end of the day, Tennessee kind of bit themselves in the foot. But at the same time, this was a really fun game from top to bottom. And yeah, Evan McPherson, I've been pleading his case all season long, and I continue to do so. He was my fantasy kicker all year next to Dan Carlson. I basically rotated them in and week out, and I have never had a better year kicking in fantasy football.
Doesn't get too much better than those two as well. Also, add on to that, what a questionable decision for Tennessee out coaching. So it's going for 2 early in that first quarter too. Kick the field goal. You're not trying to drive at the end of the game that turns into a pick. You'd be up by 1, or you'd force the Bengals to go for 2 when they scored. So talk about overthinking yourself. That was at the very. I felt like at that moment that was kind of the change of the game as well too. Granted, it took them a long time to get back into the game, but still missing out on easy points like that for really no reason. You just made the PAT. There was going for 2, and then I don't know. I just thought that was a really weird time to go for 2.
Uncharacteristic of Mike Vrabel this year for someone that has pretty much guided the ship with little to no, at least head scratching calls during games this year. Seemed to be one that I also agree with you. I didn't understand the call at the time. You were going to go up by 1 anyway. The fact that you were able to get some momentum back after getting an early interception, that would have been nice. And then, of course, we have to address the elephant in the room. You just already talked about it with the turnovers. I mean, Ryan Tannehill right now, in terms of media discussion, is kind of being a scapegoat for this game. Now, understandably so. You have 3 interceptions, 1 per each half just to start, and then you have the game end, for the Titans at least, on a pick. Here's my deal. I see the Tennessee Titans now kind of coming into how the Rams were before they let go of Jared Goff. All the pieces are there, but now you're going to see people start questioning, do they have the one piece now that can get them over the top? They clearly have a roster that's built to get division titles, possibly number 1 or 2 seeds. They did it this year with any adversity that they could find. The injuries reported. The question is, do you have enough to get to the next step? It's one thing to get to the playoffs. It's another to go on that run. That's what's going to be coming up now for the Titans after getting another knockout in the divisional round this year. 2 years in a row for them.
Titans just don't belong as a home team in the playoffs. Let's just be completely honest about it. At this point in time, they have lost every opportunity they have had to get to the AFC Championship game as a home team. Like I hate to be that guy that says it. That's like, hey, maybe you should think about losing a couple games and coming in as a 4 seed. You don't want to encourage that, but like when the writing's on the wall, the writing's on the wall. It's going to take something special for them to get over the hump. And I don't know. I've always been the go with the easiest flow type of situation, and you make the AFC Championship game when you enter the playoffs as an away team. Like, and you're not at home at any point in time. So, other than the wild card, if they're at home at the wild card, then they're fine. Music City Miracle has taught us that. So,
well, yeah.
Maybe you can, if you can find a way to replace him, maybe sure. Like if Aaron Rodgers suddenly says, I want to go to Nash Vegas, I guess, or something like that. But like if you can get something like that, but who else do you replace him with? Because Tannehill's kind of me and Kelcey talked about this on the Color Cast. He's kind of turned into that quarterback that everyone else is trying to emulate. Someone else's washed goods that you turn into a high quality starter that gets you to the playoffs. Colts tried to do it with Carson Wentz. The Panthers tried to do it with Sam Darnold. Like everyone else is now trying to copy them. Well, unless you could replace him with a perennial all-pro type of guy. Why bother? I mean, he had a terrible game, and you still had a chance to win down the stretch. You still had the ball with a game-winning drive on the line, and you get tip-picked at the end of it. At the end of the game, I mean, AJ Brown had Chipotle issues throughout the season. Derrick Henry missed more than half the season, and Julio Jones, he's not Julio Jones anymore. We love Julio. Well, we love Julio Jones, but he's not Julio Jones anymore. Unfortunately, he's a spotty big play guy at best right now. So, and they don't have the tight end. You lost your offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith. I mean, the fact that they were the number 1 seed is a testament to Tannehill's clearly capable. He just had a bad game and they couldn't overcome it. It happens. I don't know who you replace him at this point, unless you're getting Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson. But I think you'd be smart to ride with it. Who else? With Ryan Tannehill, you're going to go 5-1 in your division every year. Maybe 4-2 at worst if you let the Texans sneak by you. They'll be fine. I don't know who you replace him at this point. Let him go and go. And if Derrick Henry's healthy, the whole season, who knows with them. But I don't overthink this one. Tennessee, keep your guy for now.
Yeah, it's that weird situation where you're trying to replace somebody who falls into that category of like can be a edge top 10 quarterback at his best days, and in his worst days he's like 16th, 17th in the league. So you're still like middle of the pack, slightly above average or average at best. And like, how do you replace somebody like that in the NFL when you have exceptional talent outside of that? Like, you have to go and get either have to get them through the draft or you have to get them through the luck of the draw, like you said, DJ. Like somebody like Aaron Rodgers is saying they want to go there for some reason. I mean, it doesn't happen often, and the fact that everybody like wants to make him a scapegoat, like this is like Jimmy G in the Super Bowl all over again. Like,
Oh yeah,
because he misses one pass, like you're gonna be mad because
Mhm.
he missed one pass. Like, yeah, he probably shouldn't have tried to finesse that one into your third string receiver late in the game, but you're trying to make a play, and your coaching staff is doing you no good by not running the ball on 3rd and short either. So let's be clear about that. Like 3rd and shorts, they did not run the ball whatsoever in this game, and that was shocking to me. I'm shocked that a team like the Tennessee Titans did not run the ball on 3rd and shorts.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I mean, talk about the run game itself. I know that was the other storyline. Henry not looking like himself. I mean, he had time, but even the fact that it was iffy that he was even going to get to play based on contact tests even a week before, that is understandable. I think that also you could see that the Bengals playing, of course, to the strength. If Henry's coming back, what do? Slow down the run, even if it's a arguably weakened Derrick Henry. 3 yards a clip. They did pretty solid. Sans a few drives here or there. Next year, overall roster's been better. It's overall an improvement from last year. Just think the pass rush. I'll end on this. For Titans fans, even if you want to talk about Tannehill or whatnot, I mean, he's going to be your guy next year, possibly even the year after, just based on his extension. But the main problem they had last season was they couldn't get a pass rush. This year, it's been a completely different story. Defense looks like it's been revamped. 9 sacks in the divisional. They did everything they could. That game basically should have been won on defense for how badly they got to Joe Burrow. You just got to put it all together and hope you can stay healthy. Maybe readjust on the receiving end because A.J. Brown could easily use some help. Coach Steve here. Bengals have confidence. When a team has confidence, they are dangerous. Yes. It's very true. Swagger.
I was about to say, yeah. Is it confidence or is it naivety? Like at the end of the day, like is it a naive sense of confidence just because they don't know any better? Like I hate to say it, but Joe Burrow's his press conference after the wild card win was, yeah, we expect to be here. Like, no, you don't, Joe Burrow. Like, I'm sorry, the Nasty Natty has not been there in so long. It's been called the Nasty Natty for too long.
I just like how this kid is like, he's coming out. He's basically becoming the voice of this team. And one there, it's like, look, this is a new era, a new Cincinnati. We're not the same old Bengals that we were, like even just outside of the Marvin Lewis era. We aren't the same ones that are going to fail this way. We're coming in with a young core and trying to change the culture around here. If this isn't one that's starting that, at least I don't know what would. Talk about a year of change.
Absolutely as well too. And heck, maybe they're not the same old Bengals. Like maybe they are. Maybe Joe Burrow was right in that one where he's like, "Oh, we expect to be here." He expects to be here. His last 3 years, anytime he's been healthy, he's known nothing but W's, basically, minus that rookie year when he was under assault before getting injured. So maybe he expects to be there. Everyone's like, "Well, just follow that guy, follow the cool-looking guy at this point, follow Joey January at this point, just to get it behind him and let him carry you there." And all of their draft picks, the young guys, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, they all know winning too. They came from winning programs. The free agents, Trey Hendrickson came from the Saints winning. Chipade Awuzie came from a Cowboys team that gets to the playoffs quite frequently as well too. DJ Reader, kind of the exception, although Houston did go to the playoffs for 4 straight years when he was there. So they did bring in a good bunch of guys that know winning too. So maybe it was a weird, somehow you get out with the old, in with the new, actually did play out perfectly in a very unconventional sense.
Yeah, no, it is interesting to see the young naivety when it pays off like this. And to Coach Steve's point, he says that's even more dangerous, and it's exactly right. Like when you don't know any better, that is the most dangerous team out there because you don't know you're supposed to lose to a team that's supposed to beat you. Like you don't know you're supposed to lose to the number 1 seed when they're playing at home and they just got their superstar back. Like you don't know you're supposed to lose, and naturally that leads you to giving it all and trying to, really stomp on their throat. And that's the Bengals didn't do it last night, but they really had their opportunities to. And that's what's scary is that Bengals team at top when they're running at their best offensively. There's a very few offenses that keep up with them, especially in the AFC. I say the one game that's happening today, the Bills-Chiefs, is number 1. But outside of that, there's no other team that can keep up with them offensively.
No, not at all. I think, yeah, they're going to be a fun one to watch no matter who they're playing out of either Bills or Chiefs coming up. And we'll, of course, be talking about that game later. Of course, we want to get the second one here. We spent a lot of time on the Bengals Titans. It's a massive win, but let's just get in. I think we're going to be mostly focusing with Green Bay and San Francisco taking on Green Bay. We got 2 points. One, it's one of the strangest endings to a game I have seen in some time. With under 5 minutes, you have a 10-point swing because of a block punt for a touchdown and a field goal. And Aaron Rodgers has even more uncertainty this offseason than he did last year. And that's quite the statement for what last offseason was for the Packers. Let's just talk about the 5 minutes here. How does this get so diluted? San Francisco did a great job getting pressure on Rodgers all day. I'll give it that. But the fact that they even got to this point where you have a block change the game the way it did, I haven't seen something like this. I can't remember anything off the top of my head where it's that a special teams unit during a playoff game has been the game changer that has allowed a team to move on to the next round.
How do you score 7 points on your opening drive and then score 3 for the remaining 56 minutes of the game? That's how you get to that point as well too. And special teams have been both teams' conundrum, I guess you could say, this entire season. And looks like Green Bay's just bit them in the butt a little bit more down the stretch as well too. We thought getting all those superstars back on defense, they'd be a little more dangerous. Well, you kind of forgot to block on the punt and I don't know how you let that guy get through that situation as well too. So I honestly, I think it's more of an indictment on how could you be the MVP quarterback and score 10 points and only three of them in like 56 minutes, and the amount of times that they left points out on the board and just kind of sold the possessions like, well, I don't like what I see. We'll come back next time. It felt like they just kept waiting for just kind of waiting for the perfect opportunity and never just picked up the easy thing.
Yeah. And then there's Coach Steve talking in special teams wasn't good at times this year, so he's not too shocked. No, that's fair. I mean, it is one of those situations where without special teams and the discipline on special teams, like you have to have it covered up somewhere. And he's exactly right. The offense was able to cover it up through most of the year, and when you can't do that, you can't do that. I mean, playoff games, you have to be disciplined in all phases, and if you're not, we see what happens there. And I don't know, man. This was weird in a lot of ways as well, just because you're just sitting here looking at it like, man, this should not go this way. The Niners should not be giving the Packers this much of a fit. But then, what can you say? When this is your team,
yes,
that's going to give up anything.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to delay while I tried to get that downloaded because that took a while.
Please, that fits the narrative perfectly. You have to be able to be disciplined and execute the small things. Special teams is all about the execution and doing the small things correctly to allow for the best possible outcome when you're either exchanging the possession of the ball or you're gathering the possession of said ball. That's just the whole deal. Even for points, I mean, the Packers had a blocked field goal too. 2 blocks in the course of the game that really did change it too. Because if you land that field goal at the end of at the first half, we could be talking about overtime, a completely different contest as well. And that's just on base points alone. Opportunities missed, we can talk about elsewhere. But that just itself possibly could have gone up 10-0, had that buffer, maybe a little more confidence. So you have 2 possessions. Things could change in terms of play calling. Just saying. Coach Steve, I'm more shocked about people's thoughts on the Niners defense. They have been good, just hurt. Yeah, that's fair.
They finished top 3, so I mean, and top 10 in all categories. So it checks out too. They get pressure as well as anybody. And Aaron Rodgers has been kind of known this season to kind of sit there and just throw it into the flat, even when nothing's there as well too. He's not quite as aggressive. We've seen Aaron Rodgers in the past. So if you get after him, he'll just kind of flick the ball away and just like we said, just kind of very nonchalant, almost as Kelcey has called him, a much better Jay Cutler, if you will. So he's had a lot of moments this year.
At times,
because he lacks discipline.
I kind of want to knock Matt LaFleur. There was something else. They kind of abandoned the run game for a contest that was in the snow, and wasn't like it was a blowout or anything. It was a close one that they were getting yards that they were ground and pounding when they needed. It just felt like they tried to lean so hard into the passing game at times, mainly because I think they were getting successes at chance with Devontae Adams. He always gets his due, but I felt like he was leaning too much in that one element. Aaron Jones is a stud. I know A.J. Dillon was knocked out with an injury, but second half, it was almost like it was abandoned completely.
I mean, yeah, like Aaron Jones had 120 yards at half. and then he goes AWOL in the second
Mhm.
half. Like, why? What are you doing again? Maybe I don't know. This is a situation where it comes down to Aaron Rodgers maybe took over
Could
and
be.
play calling and just said, you know what, I don't care what you want to call Matt LaFleur, but I doubt it. That man wants to win, and that man especially hates San Francisco for what they did. Like like that man wants to beat San Francisco more than anybody else, or be on San Francisco's team. I mean, that's his, when it comes down to it. He is a Bay Area kid. That's where he wants to be, and they shafted him, and so he wanted to shaft them back. And I don't know whether he took over and was trying to beat him his way, but I don't know. It was really weird. Just Aaron Jones is dominating, and then all of a sudden, you just don't go. You don't use him anymore. Like at any point, and if you're gonna use Devontae, that's fine, but you have to use Devontae and someone else. Like there
Right.
has to be somebody to take a little pressure off of Devontae. So if you don't have the discipline to throw it down to Lazard or throw it down to your third string tight end or throw it down to Aaron Jones, then you're never gonna win.
Yeah. If you talk about playoffs, where Randall Cobb, I felt would have been, they brought him in to be that, like one of those drop down guys where he disappeared as well. It just kind of, I'm Alan Lazard. I would barely remember him even getting opportunities. Scandling, Jesus Christ. I definitely don't remember any.
Well, he
any
was injured
opportunities
last night.
Yeah, but that's fair.
But yeah, no, I mean, Randall Cobb, this continues Randall Cobb's trend of going to teams. Teams will be like, yeah, we're going to use him as check down. And then teams forget to use him as a check down, a.k.a. Dallas. 100% looking at Dallas. And then now, again, in Green Bay.
All right, yeah. All right, folks. Here's the deal. Rodgers, where's he going? That's the last thing we'll do to end this segment here. So we'll talk about Coach Steve's comment here. Offensive guys sometimes outsmart themselves and get bored with the same plays over and over and try to force it. Yeah, I mean, you can possible, yeah.
Because they lack discipline. That's going to be the theme of today's show, is lacking discipline.
I mean, I'm a firm believer in if you can try and stop me. If the same thing keeps working, prove that you can stop my offense. And then
so is DJ. And I can tell you that from his Madden play calling is like, look, I'm going to keep running it until you stop me. And then when you stop me, I'm going to burn you in a different way.
Right.
Tom Brady's made an entire career out of it. I will run a 5-yard out route the entire game until you put somebody in the flat. Then I'll throw it right over the top of you. I mean, if they're not going to stop it, you should not change your play calling as well, too. And that's what makes Tom Brady so great through his entire career is he will take that 1,000% of the time and not think twice about it. Very rarely do we see him get greedy and basically force something that's not there.
Keep baiting. That's what it is. Bait the defense. Keep on leading them on. What? What?
That sounds like a bitter Bears fan is what that sounds like to me.
I mean, I was having a good time last night. The last 5 minutes of that contest, I'll admit, last 5 minutes of that contest, I was minutes that contest in my head before, just so I didn't jinx myself. I was laughing in my head as I watched this whole thing devolve into chaos for Packers fans. I'll be frank, because even more chaotic, and I'll end this news segment with a question: where's Rodgers going? That's what everyone wants to know. I don't think he retires. I'm going to say that. I think that he's going to evaluate possibly moving on. I mean, that's meltdown of all proportions, the way that went. If that doesn't scream that you're like, damn it, this organization's not helping me, like he was talking about last year. I mean, what else do you need? Unless he just wants to end his career because he's a Packer. I don't know if he'll do that, though.
I don't know where he goes. Like, where does it get much better than what you have? Honestly, you're in full control and you have the best receiver in the game, arguably, and multiple running backs. Where do you go that you get to match that as well, too? Very few places there can you really go. So, I honestly think he's going to stay. I think they're going to find a way to keep Devontae and keep around it, basically bring in somebody else. Not a free agent, but maybe like draft somebody. They'll have some cap work to do because they're way over the cap. But I don't see where else I don't see anywhere. I don't see greener pastures for him that's blatantly obvious. Kind of like when Brett Favre went to the Jets. It was like, oh, they will gladly take him. And then you could work your way to Minnesota, which is what you really wanted anyway. Or Peyton Manning to Denver, Tom Brady to Tampa Bay. There's nothing blatantly obvious like that can easily happen that I can see.
Yeah, like everywhere else he could go is you have to face 2 or 3 quarterbacks in your division that you don't want to face. Really, you have a cakewalk in the NFC North. Let's be completely honest. You are the number 1 quarterback there, even on one leg, and it's not even close. And it's if he doesn't leave, or if he does leave somehow, I don't think he will. I'm kind of in the same boat as DJ. DJ and I talked about this on air last night on the Colorcast. It was just there's just so much there for him in Green Bay. But I do think if he leaves, I'm still putting a feather in San Francisco and saying he wants to be there. Somehow, some way, he wants to be in San Francisco.
If I have to pick a team, I'm going to put a random feather out there too. Why not go to Indianapolis with that offensive line? You can stick the ball in Jonathan Taylor's chest the entire game as well too. Maybe bring Devontae with you since they have cap space. Then you get to do everything you did, and you get more than half your games in a dome. And you talked about divisions. Well, you just have to deal with Tennessee's front line. And I mean, other than that, you get Houston and Jacksonville, who we'll see what Jacksonville wants. As long as you don't have to go down to Jacksonville. But at that point, why not? At that point, there's another. I guess there's an option. We have to pick someone, but I still think Green Bay should be the out front favorite.
As long as Chris Ballard is willing and able to use resources that he keeps stockpiling at some point. That's the caveat for me. I think that's a great option. It's just the GM there doesn't like doing free agency as often with splashy plays, or it's a draft build first, and I get that. But sometimes you got to go for that big play. I think it's about time for them. Packers, Steelers, 49ers, Saints. If Sean Payton stays, reports are he doesn't know what he will cook. Okay, I mean, I've heard the Steelers. I mean, I think Denver.
I'm sorry, Steelers and Russell Wilson just go together too well.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying Denver for the last year. They have everything there. This is just like when Peyton Manning went there. You just need the one spot, and they've been fighting for that one spot. I mean, that group is I think that group puts a risky play out to try and get a trade. That's how I look at it for them. Even with all the QB talent that is in the AFC West, I think that you can put in something that is a well-rounded team. They just need their commanding officer at the front of that offense.
Right.
So
yeah, we'll have to wait and see that. That would be very interesting.
That's it. Well, let's give it in. I know as the playoffs go on, this segment does get shorter, but we do want to give DJ his time as it is quarter number 2 here for DJ's best bets and some other ones, of course. Again, it's I guess we're going to be revisiting partially yesterday and then hearing about today. Maybe mix some things up with some different conversations. So go ahead, DJ. Let's see what
we'll
you
talk
got.
about what went wrong last week. Tampa Bay get 8.5 over Philly. Thought maybe Philly could keep that close to garbage time, and not so much. They dug it too big of a hole to come back. So that one didn't work. Kansas City 12.5 over Pitt. Consider Pitt to cover. They got ramrodded as we pretty much expected. Like that was one with the caveat of if you have extra money, don't spend it if you are betting the house and the mortgage. Arizona's underdog did not work out. 49ers at Cowboys at 51. I wanted the over. Turns out both offenses forgot to show up. Who would have thought? So that one didn't work out. But we did hit Cardinals and Rams taking the under. That game was controlled on the ground. And then Chiefs Steelers take the over because the Kansas City alone will basically get the over as they were able to do as well. Today, the Rams and Tampa Bay 48.5. I'm going to take the under for the same reason as last week. I think both teams will be really conservative offensively. Tom Brady is going to utilize a whole lot of tight ends from Gronk to Cameron Brate. Maybe even see OJ Howard sighting for a change as well too. And I think the Rams are going to be really conservative as well too. I think they're going to try and force Cam Akers and Sony Michel going. We're going to see Cooper Kupp underneath a lot. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Odell in this game down the field. I think this is going to be a very conservative game from both sides. So take the under there. Kansas City versus Bills, 53.5 points, one of the higher spreads we've seen all season. Yeah, take that over. It's good weather in Kansas City. It's like 38 degrees and sunny out there right now. I mean, you take that 10 days of Sunday. We saw Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes have two of the better quarterbacking games in recent playoff history. And just last week, Patrick Mahomes really in 2.5 quarters. Josh Allen's from pillar to post. I can't see any reason why they don't continue that. I look for them to put up a whole lot of points, so hammer that over. Now looking at some prop bets, since we have a lot fewer games to go to as well too. Plus, and this is according to Caesar Sportsbook that I found these on. Plus 850 for Tyreek Hill and Stephon Diggs to both get over 100 yards. You're telling me plus 850 yards for two of the leading receivers to get over 100 yards against defenses that there are holes, if you will, with some of the best offenses. Stephon Diggs is going to get loose at who's going to guard him on Kansas City. I mean, he's going to find a way to get loose. Tyreek Hill, he gets loose on everybody. There's no Tre'Davious White. He'll find a way to get 100 yards. Even if it takes him 14 catches, he will find a way. Looking at plus 500 for Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and Jalen Ramsey to each get 4 tackles and an assist. The way that game's going to go, that seems really honestly pretty easy. Aaron Donald's guaranteed 4 tackles. Von Miller will probably find 4. At plus 500 odds, I'll take my chances that Jalen Ramsey gets in there as well. Then plus 550 for both Dawson Knox and Travis Kelcey to get touchdowns. Copy and paste this Stephon Diggs and Tyreek Hill's argument here and just put it right here. Both those guys. I mean, Dawson Knox got 2 touchdowns last week. Travis Kelcey got 1 and threw 1 last week. I don't see any reason they both in this game. Even if you double team, you can't double team anybody in this game. Nobody can get double teamed on either side. So I look for everybody to eat in this game, including both Dawson Knox, Travis Kelcey, and then Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. That one's my favorite. Both to get 100 yards at plus 850. Yes, please. I'm gonna have to take a quick trip to Pennsylvania to put this bet down real quick. My goodness, that's a good one for me.
I mean, I'll be completely honest. You kind of You took my Travis Kelcey, Dawson Knox one, and that's what I looked at, and I love that pick because, again, I continue the trend of the tight ends always scoring in playoff games, and especially for teams like the Bills. Obviously, Dawson Knox has become I won't even say a resurgence. Like, he has just surged onto the scene and said, "Hey, I'm here. Throw me the damn ball," and that's exactly what Josh Allen does. And then Travis Kelce, we all know what he can do. Like, Travis Kelce is the prototypical tight end right now. He is the number one tight end in the league, in the world right now. I don't think it's even a question as far as just what his production has been, even on an off year for him, which is what's crazy. It's an off year for him, and he's still that good. So I love that pick for sure for an alternate prop bet for out there this weekend.
Absolutely. They both have frequent flyer miles for Pager every single time, too. So it almost seems like a surefire thing at this point as well. And who's going to stop them on it? I mean, Tremaine Edmonds is fantastic at linebacker for the Bills, but Travis Kelce's could beat him in the red zone as well, too. He will find a way. And then, obviously, on the Chiefs defense, you have Tyrann Mathieu, but who else is going to stop Dawson Knox? Daniel Sorensen. Like, we saw what happened the first time they played it. The Bills had whatever they want. We saw what they did last week against the Patriots, arguably the best defense in the AFC, at least secondary-wise, that was left. Maybe the Bills are in that conversation too, but they toasted them. Josh Allen played the literal perfect game for the most part. That most people, you talk about what we do in Madden. Good luck mimicking that in Madden, let alone in real life. So I can't see a situation in which this game isn't A, over 53.5 over under, and B, where all of those don't come true. I think it's going to be a high-flying game, and there's no weather concerns either, unless a random tornado is going to sprout out. But by all intents and purposes, it's a nice sunny day in Kansas City.
No doubt
It's a
about
nice
it.
spring day.
Spring day. That's a good comparison. I like that. I mean, that's good weather for this time of year. I would have expected, of course, like an ice bowl type of environment. Talking like 2018 AFC Championship game type of conditions.
Oh, not that again.
But no, afraid not. I will. There's one of them that sticks out. Just that I like. It's trend. If there's one thing that the Bucs do well, it's run stopping. Cam Akers right now, you got one that's for over under on 50, about 50.5 yards. I've been seeing. I wouldn't be minded taking the under on that if I'm doing a prop bet, if that's that case. And I'm going to stick with you. I think I can see Knox if you're talking about touchdown prop bets. I think he covers that. That's one thing with the Bills that's changed this season a lot, and then I think that has helped them evolve. It's last year was reliance so much on Stephon Diggs. Everything ran through Stephon Diggs, and the rest was gravy. This year, anyone, like we're talking all the weapons that were there for the most part, or at least Emmanuel Sanders coming in, that offense is diversified a ton. So, some of these that you can put up for numbers, I think anyone's possible. Like even I wouldn't mind seeing, like, for example, Devin Singletary. I could see him going for, hitting on a running prop bet. Just recent trends, he's finally being their lead guy. So, I think confidence in him's been rebuilt if you want to do something like that. There's one for Gabriel Davis here, talking over under. They only have it at like 35.5 yards for the ones I've been looking at. I wouldn't be surprised you get the over. Talk about someone that's come on late in the season and made an impact for the Bills in that receiving corps as one that you can go to and dump it off. That he's been impressive. I wouldn't mind seeing that as well. And I think either quarterback prop bets, you take the over too. I think that with how the Bills have looked this year, I think you're risking it with Mahomes a little bit because Mahomes' offense has had to kind of adapt to be less on the explosive high flying plays, more on the dink and dunk chunk yards that rely on the talents of your specialty players. But I think that both QBs could cover an over on their yardage numbers given the chance.
100%. Patty, but you mentioned he's been dink and dunk throughout most season. But when push has come to shove, we have seen that Chiefs offense really still has the ability to crank that up to 11 out of nowhere. Both the Raiders games and even just last week after Steelers like, all right, we got a 7-0 lead. Our defense is here to play. TJ Watt scored Defense Player of the Year. And then they rattle off like 42 consecutive points or something absolutely ridiculous like that and don't miss the rest of the way. So I agree with you. If they do come out dinking and dunking, that might hinder some of your prop bets. But if Josh Allen and them do what we think they're going to do, we know Kansas City is going to be able to answer back. I don't think this is going to be like the regular season game where it's all the Bills, because since Melvin Ingram came over to the Chiefs, they've had a little something extra both offensively and defensively. So I look forward to this game. I can't wait. We'll be on the call for this one, Cast. I think Kelcey and I might need to have to chug some tea and honey afterwards because I think it's going to be, oh my God, the entire time.
Yeah, I'm going to lose my voice in this game for sure.
For better or for worse.
This is one of the best on paper nightcaps that you could have for the NFL. Like the schedule just worked out so well. And even yesterday, I think all of it was a surprise because I think most NFL fans, if you're looking at these games, are like, Saturday I'll get through. I'm more paying attention on the Sunday slate just for how explosive they are. And now I'm just now it's almost like the expectations are greater just because of what you saw yesterday. So you guys will have a blast for the end of the night. You got a great rematch coming up in latest of a new AFC rivalry too. That's just what's funny about that whole thing. It's kind of becoming like another slowly another Patriots Colts type of vibe with how the two have been going at each other in recent years. I don't know if it'll continue, but I would say with the talent around and contracts, I bet that it will. And the NFL probably likes it that way.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. But that'll do it for quarter number 2. That'll take us into that beautiful time, halftime. So we'll be right back with you guys in just one moment as we get ready to go and do quarter 3 and we talk fantasy.
Back in it after halftime for quarter number 3. Our fantasy awards are really, is this even really awards? Call them duds.
Yes.
We should probably rename it.
Yes, it is awards. We are giving them the award because I had to draft them and deal with them. So they get an award. It might look like a plunger, but it's an award.
It's a gold-crusted plunger is what they're getting right now as well, too. Well, it's still a trophy.
A gold crust or gold crusty?
I may have got the $1 spray paint to spray paint these things gold, but they'll enjoy it when they get them in the mail.
It's kind of deserved. Let's be honest. So yeah, we've been doing kind of awards ceremonies, in a way, for recent shows. Last week we did kind of our surprise mid rounders, if you will.
Yeah, waiver wires last week, mid rounders the week before.
Yep, exactly. And so now we're going to be doing our duds. I'm going to give you one right off the head that's just right off the top of it. It's just burned me. And I was so upset. And you know what? It can be laughable just because of the offense, but I had high hopes. Okay. I had high hopes. I like Kenny Galladay. I liked what he did in Detroit. I had faith that that this was going to work out in New York and that it would help evolve the offense. I thought he was good. I thought he deserved his due for the contract he was given. And he goes to New York. And a few things happen. Injury woes happen. They use him the same way they did in Detroit, which is just a streak, just kind of a deep threat. His game didn't evolve much. And, well, Daniel Jones was either injured or didn't really evolve his game either. And you could see even early in the season, Galladay upset, Galladay frustrated at how he's being used. Disappointment. I drafted him, at least round 4 or 5 in one of my leagues. I drafted him in 2 leagues, guys. I had that much hope that I would see this man take the Giants to another step, and he would be at least a good receiver 2, possibly receiver 3 I could put in a flex position. No. Complete and utter disappointment. That is the one that sticks out right away to me, and I've learned my lesson. And next year he'll be left on waiver wires, hopefully in my leagues, and then he'll be a surprise or something later down the line. I washed that taste out of my mouth. I gotta take a moment if I find to get another one because it was just that bad.
Well, I'll go ahead and just say something very interesting. I actually managed to get out of this year's draft in the one league I was in without getting anybody that was a major bust. The closest one was Noah Fant, which ends up tight end 8. But you know what? That's not his fault. That offense just sucked. Like at the end of the day. But unfortunately for a lot of people, number 1 picks, number 2 picks, number 3 picks. If they went Saquads, let's just say they had bust of the year potentially he ends up running back 8. I'm not honestly sure how he ends up running back 8. If we're being completely fair, like that was a rough season for Saquads.
Purely from receptions that went absolutely nowhere. Those 2-yard those 2-yard catches.
Yeah, like you look at that. That was rough for him. I also look at Brandon Ayuk and Chase Claypool as just huge busts on the season. You talk. Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse for the first 5 weeks of the season. Mm-hmm. Chase Claypool, again, this is also kind of a byproduct of the offense, but still, You are supposed to be that dude. You're supposed to be wide receiver 10 at worst. I mean, Juju goes down and then you get worse. That was number one receiver bust for me is Chase Claypool. I mean, obviously Kenny Golladay is probably the true number one there, just because the way the Giants used him was just awful.
It was bad.
But with Chase Claypool, and then not knowing the rules and to not celebrate inside of 2 minutes, I know that has nothing to do with fantasy football, but at the same time, that added on top of everything is why I'm going Chase Claypool as my number one bust for the receiving core, but Saquon for the running backs. That's my number one pick for running back.
Okay, cool. I think there's a lot of them. I'm going to just hammer through a few of them that stuck out to me. Number one, we talked about Julio Jones. We talked about it earlier. A lot of people drafted him thinking they would get Julio Jones, new system, revitalized, and not so much. You got a guy that you probably cut after a few weeks as well, too, unfortunately, between injuries and just not being overly productive.
Hopefully you didn't cut him too early because he did have a 45-point week in there.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Then you have Odell as well, too, who he had those 6 touchdowns at the back end of the stretch. Those was great, but that was literally his entirety of fantasy points on the entire season. That was unfortunately a disappointing season for him as well, too. Wait for fantasy football-wise. Darren Waller was surprisingly disappointing for me. He ended up finishing tight end 17. He's a guy that some people probably took in the first 2 rounds, and he ended up you could have honestly got Dawson Knox undrafted or Dalton Schultz, and it had it better off with him as well, too. He just obviously was partially injuries, partially just kind of he couldn't really adjust his game down the stretch as well, too. They adjusted once he got injured and never really got him back into the flow. And then the other one, too, is Lamar Jackson. He had a few good games early in the season fantasy-wise, but between injuries and just rough stretches like against Miami and he had a lot of single-digit type performances against the Browns where he threw 4 interceptions. He's another guy you probably took in the first round, especially the back end of the first round, maybe second round, one of the top 2 or 3 quarterbacks taken. And he was kind of a letdown, honestly, as well, too. It was not Lamar Jackson this year. He had a very down year. He had a couple good performances against the Chiefs, the 100 rushing yards, but overall as a whole, it was kind of it was a disappointing season to take Lamar Jackson early on. So chances are it's not like 2019 where you took him early and he won you the league by himself. This year, if you took him early, you probably didn't make the playoffs, or if you did, it was not the way you anticipated it.
No.
And I would say 2 years. Well, I'll go, Zach, I'll let you go because I don't want to take.
I'm just going to comment on one that hits closer to home for me. Allen Robinson was ranked in some regards for lists early in this year, before the season even started. We're talking ahead of guys like Justin Jefferson, a guy ahead of Mike Evans in some cases. In one list I found, if you want to talk about disappointment in production, if you drafted him like round 2 or 3. That's someone that I would be just like face palming right now. And I think it's a combination of, incompetence from Bears coaching staff, years of, him basically having high production. And now you're faced with having to reset yourself and learning with a new quarterback. You didn't teach yourself or didn't work with chemistry, and an organization that's burned you. But nonetheless, you had that high projection for what became a receiver you could easily dump off into the free agent market by mid-season. That's disappointment for early season projections.
Yeah. And so, like, Allen Robinson, obviously, big miss. There's also another one out there that I didn't want to really talk about because I feel like I've been harsh on him all season. But Russell Wilson, I mean, a guy who was projected quarterback, who started at quarterback 7 before the draft, ends up QB 19 overall. I'm sorry, but not good enough. Granted, obviously, we talked about the finger injury. He was QB 10 before that. But then he comes back. Does not post more than 1 game over 9 fantasy points in his return after those 3 games. That's awful. Absolutely awful. Considering the weapons you have, he had 1 game, and it was a 20-point game that he cracked. That was over 9 fantasy points. Absolutely insane. I don't get it, man. Oh, sorry. He produced fewer than 9 points 3 times and eclipsed 20 points only once, which is a quarterback. Again, you got to do better than that. Especially a quarterback with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, you have to do better than that. So, I mean, Russell Wilson, to me, might be the biggest bust of the season fantasy football quarterback-wise.
Right. Well, it felt like I think Wilson owners, even myself in the past, you're expecting at some point in the year, maybe once or twice, you get that like mega dud that he seems to drop at times. I don't know. It's surreal. He'll be on the hottest of streaks like any QB, and then he'll consistently have at least 1 to 2 games a year that you will just flop because his team just doesn't come to play. This year was like exemplified, and even with him having injury, I agree with you. Coming back, getting up to speed. I don't know if it was that or just the year continuing a downward spiral the way it was after that finger injury, those were exemplified even more. So if you had hope that you were going to avoid that and that he was coming back to do to get you a playoff push, you're probably feeling burned in the back half of your season.
I don't know, just my thought.
I mean, I get it.
DJ, it looks like you had a weird look on your face, like you don't believe me.
Well, I look at Russell Wilson in the final 2 weeks of the season. He had 4 touchdowns and no picks against Detroit, then 3 touchdowns and no 1 pick against Arizona. Finished north of 20 points in both those games.
Are you sure?
Waiver wire, good waiver wire at the end. Then I'll give him that.
That's what I found.
Sorry, I didn't count week 18. That's my apologies.
Okay, there.
Oh, my bad. I didn't count the week when everybody else was.
You're saying we didn't throw in the chaos of some bad
There's also
owners.
Houston in there. He had 21 points as well too.
Was that pre or post injury?
Post injury, week 14.
Oh, all right. Well, that's
Either way, we agree with you. He was a letdown. You finished QB 20 when you're expected to be QB 8, 9, top 10. Either way, definitely a huge letdown.
It wasn't just the biggest part about him being a letdown is it's not just letting down him, like Russell Wilson owners. You're letting down Tyler Lockett owners. You're letting down DK Metcalf owners. You're letting down insert tight end here owners. I mean, that was the worst part about him because everybody thought it was going to be great because you get an offensive coordinator finally, and it's like, oh,
right. I mean,
well, who knows? Maybe he'll be thrown. Him and Chase Claypool can bounce back together in Pittsburgh next year. Maybe they could both recline themselves out.
Them and that invisible offensive line.
It's going to throw it to Najee Harris.
Yeah, I mean, you'll be good with Najee.
I mean, yeah, you can you're talking Metcalf. You can just put him in as a 2-for-1 deal, kind of like those soap or deodorant packs you find at the store. Disappointment two piece right there for those that wanted to double up.
We got you guys a value 3-pack for disappointments there, and that's Tyler Lockett included.
Throw in a Tyler Lockett for extra. No, all 3 of these for one great price.
Yeah. It's been a rough fantasy year. I think that's safe to say. But that'll lead us into, obviously, our quarter 4, our primetime pick'ems, presented by Colorcast.
Whoop, whoop.
And we've already got 2 games out of the way, guys. How do you feel about that?
Well, I'm 0-2. So
yeah, we'll get to your record here in a minute, but I got to give you credit for last week, Zach. Obviously, coming off your regular season championship, 6-0 last week. 5-1 is DJ, and myself also finished 5-1. And the football guy struggling when it actually counts with the money on the line. The playoffs are here, and he's struggling 4-2. And Zach, you mentioned it. The Bengals Titans won. You and Hector both went the Titans, and then we all got this one wrong. It's safe to say. So 0-2, rough start for you this week, Zach. But DJ, kind of me and you both 1-1 right now, and it's this one's going to be decided later on tonight, I guess.
It feels like that's what it will be as well, too. In Burrow, we trusted. In Burrow, we succeeded as well, too. There's still enough games left as well, too. But you mentioned Green Bay, the one that surprised us, let us all down. And we'll see. I think this little game today will kind of decide things as well, too. Because right now, it's all 3 of us tied at what was it, 6-1 now or something like that as well, too? 5-1, something like that. So
so we're all at 6-2 right now.
Yeah.
7-2 right now officially. So
yeah, well, things will be decided here in the next couple of games, you could say.
Yeah. So, but that'll lead us into our 3:00 game, our early game today. The Rams, the Bucks. Surprised nobody went Bucks. I got to be honest. I thought somebody was going to go Buccaneers.
I thought the same thing. A sweep, that's a little bit. I mean, okay, I get why the Rams here. I see it. But also, this is Tampa Bay in the playoffs. It's Tom Brady. I'm also shocked. Maybe if Jim was here on the picks, he would have picked the Bucks, honestly. But I'm just shocked that no one took them. As well.
I feel like everybody was scared to lose this one. I feel like this came down. Like I put my pick in first, so that's all I'm gonna say. Is I didn't have the opportunity to see everybody else's pick, so I picked the Rams, and I thought I was gonna be on an island by myself. I'm like doing research. I'm like, should I go back and change it? And then I look at it when I was making the graphic, and everybody else went Rams too. And I was like, oh.
It was my preseason Super Bowl pick when we did our show, so I kind of have to stick with it as well too. If Chris Godwin was healthy and they had and maybe I would have leaned a little. It's hard to pick against Tampa Bay. I almost picked them regardless, just to completely axe my preseason pick altogether. But they look a little healthier. That defense came to play in that week 1 against the Cardinals as well too, or in the first playoff round. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to give Tom Brady and them a little bit of fits. They won earlier in the season when both teams were at full strength as well too. So it's going to be really tough. The question is Matthew Stafford can't do anything stupid. You hate to say that about a guy that is a Pro Bowl, was at one point an MVP quarterback. You just can't throw anything stupid. He's had some rough games down the stretch where he threw egregious passes, looking like doing his best. What in the Carson Wentz are you doing here? He can't do anything like that as well, too. If he can avoid making those, I think they have a really good chance. But if he can't do what Drew Brees did against them in the divisional round last year, if that makes sense. Where Drew Brees kind of started to come apart, then they started fumbling. They just can't come apart. If they do what they did last week, they'll win. That's my thinking on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the Rams with Cam Akers, man, when you have Cam Akers coming out and doing what he's been doing, it's hard to not think that given the firepower of their receiving core and the detriment to the secondary of Tampa Bay right now, like how injured they are, it's hard to think that addition of Cam Akers along with Sony Michel won't be enough extra needed to just sort of offset the Buccaneers and not allow them to focus purely on one aspect, which would be dropping Levante David and Devin White into coverage to try to help out. Like they actually have to play close to the line at some point in time. And Matt Stafford should have some easy pitches and catches in today's game, but you're exactly right, DJ. I don't think he can make any mistakes. Like the over under for him at like 0.5 interceptions in the day is like a minus 130 odds. So it's pretty much even. So basically if he throws a pick, it's kind of expected him to throw a pick. If he can beat that and go under and like not throw a pick today, I feel like the Rams can walk away. But again, it's so hard going against Tom Brady. Like, that's my biggest thing. Like, that's my biggest aspect. Like, I don't want to say Tom Brady's not going to win because I've been proven wrong so many times by saying that.
I think we're going to see a lot of Cooper Kupp this game. I think he is going to be featured. Like last week, they basically double team and said somebody else beat us, and Odell did that. I don't know if the Buccaneers can really do that. They don't have the ability to double team with that and feel comfortable guarding everybody else with that secondary. It's a pretty decent ball hawking secondary, but in coverage, they can get caught up as well, too. So I think we're going to see a lot of Cooper Kupp on those unders, those zig routes, just little things like that as well, too, trying to get Levante David and Devin White chasing him, basically. So I think we're going to see a lot of Cooper Kupp feature day. The question is, can Matthew Stafford, as you mentioned, he has to hit that under. If he throws one pick, preferably early, and it's not a pick six, you just can't throw anything late.
No, got to be able to get out front early against the Bucs, really, and then of course with the lead, more aggressive defense, be able to get pressure. You know, as Michael Strahan has said famously back when they won in 2007, get to Brady, you can win. You know, got to keep him disoriented off his bounce. I know it's for any quarterback, but that's been kind of like the one thing that Brady has had a luxury of all of his career for the most part. Really excellent line play. They make sure it's built around him well. You got to be able to get in. And it is a bit of a banged up line this year. It's kind of a banged up Bucs team. They are getting some pieces back, of course. Even without Ronald Jones, you get Leonard Fournette coming back. Vontae David being here, that's going to help bolster some things too for that defensive side. So they're getting some pieces. I just think Rams I chose, much like you guys, there's just a lot there. Like they have everything coming together well. It's why I picked the Titans as well. They had everything coming back, full strength. So this pick is a similar deal, full strength. And you look at how the Bucs haven't really evolved that secondary whatsoever this year. I mean, the Rams, as long as you aren't seeing Stafford, like you're saying, make some stupid mistakes, because there's been a few games that have been multi-interception games that they should have won this year because of the fact that it's been careless with the football. Play the same way, even if you're not in LA like you were in this earlier season matchup. Now that you're in Tampa, I think you can walk away with this. I think all the pieces are there. Even if you can't run the offense through the run game like Sean McVay likes to, they have so much on the in the receiving core to beat that secondary that the Bucs have. I find it such a hard task for them to keep up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're all on the same page on this one. So yeah, it's weird. It is just a weird feeling though, going against the reigning Super Bowl champs, Tom Brady, and just like not voting for him. But the 6:30 game, we do have a little difference here, and this is what I was talking about, DJ. The deciding one for this week, it looks like right here, will be this Bills and Chiefs game, because Chiefs win, DJ takes the week. Mm-hmm. Bills win, I take the week this way somehow, which is shocking me. After my regular season performance here.
So what you're telling me is I picked the Chiefs and I'm the weird guy after what we've seen the last 3 to 4 years. So I am the anomaly taking the island here with the Chiefs. That is how this is going to be. All right, so I'm clearly the one out of line here, picking a team that's been to 2 consecutive Super Bowls and 3 consecutive AFC championship games. So I'm clearly the weird one here, I guess. But yes. my reasoning for this one is A, the weather is going to be fine. We talked about that too. There's not going to be anything hindering. B, I think the Chiefs down the stretch, since they brought in Melvin Ingram, that defense has been a lot better. The only time they really had an issue was going against Joey B and that Jamar Chase show they put on as well too. And the Chiefs still finished with the best record in the AFC. They just lost the tiebreaker to Tennessee from that early loss in the season as well too. And I don't put as much stock in the first matchup these two had because while the Bills were honestly at their absolute peak when they were getting plus 30, they were like plus 17 odds every damn week, everyone they went against. And that was when the Chiefs were struggling. So I think the Chiefs got something going. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to play. I think Chris Jones then will get after Josh Allen just enough so he can't be perfect. And we're going to see Patrick Mahomes, as vintage as we've seen Patrick Mahomes, kind of like we saw the back half of that Steelers game. They're going to do enough to win. It's going to be really close, but I favor the Chiefs. I think a little more experience, and I think they still have the same amount of firepower to match the Bills. And I think they're not as dependent on their defense like the Patriots are, where they have to basically play man and hope J.C. Jackson eliminates somebody. They can get after with Chris Jones and Frank Clark absolutely eating people up front, and Tyrann Mathieu still the ability to make plays here and there. So I'm going to lean with the Chiefs, but it's not a problem to go with the Bills as well too. It's 50-50 at this point.
Yeah. This is for me. This goes back to similar to your Rams pick. This is my preseason Super Bowl favorite. This is the team I have going to the Super Bowl and winning it, and I still stand by it. I mean, they've actually gotten better in what I imagined because all I asked for was give me a semblance of a running game, and this team will make it to the Super Bowl. They finally got a little bit of a running game last week with Devin Singletary. I need 40 yards. I need 40 yards and just 40 quality yards, like on 10 touches from Devin Singletary. And that's a good enough running game that I'll be happy with because everything else goes for the Bills as far as just their, basically one-on-one matchups. I lean towards the Bills. And L'Jarius Sneed is a problem because for the Chiefs, I mean, he has been an absolute outstanding corner all year long. And so he's going to be the big issue is who does he match up with? Who does he try to shut down? Because if you go one-on-one with him and Stephon Diggs, that does leave a lot of openings on the backside. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Chiefs go that old Patriot style where you double the primary and then single cover the second guy. So Emmanuel Sanders or Gabriel Davis gets single covered, but then they basically bracket Stephon Diggs. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I don't know if the Chiefs have the athleticism because you mentioned a guy by the name of Dan Sorensen earlier, and that's a huge liability to me. Dan Sorensen is a liability in this game. Just he has proven that he can play. It's just he just has some boneheaded plays. He gets caught too much looking into the backfield. So does Tyrann Mathieu for that matter, and that's what worries me a little bit about the Chiefs defense. And again, at the end of the day, I'm going to ride and die by Micah Hyde being one of the best safeties in the league that just gets overlooked constantly. And he continues to prove me right with a pick last week as well. And if he can keep riding his high horse and keep getting these just huge monumental plays, I feel like this Bills team can easily walk into the Super Bowl.
The only thing I'll add to mine is if Trey White was healthy, I'd probably pick the Bills. If Trey Davis White being out is kind of the big thing that made it easier to pick the Chiefs for me. If he's there, he can guard anybody. But
absolutely, yeah.
Damage control, I think, will be, or at least containment. That's kind of the theme for me here, and I know that's a tall ask for any secondary. I think you have Buffalo that I think it's the home field advantage. I think isn't as much an issue. They already went in this year and had to deal with that crowd. They're used to it at this point. I think that it's just, can you get the same results by limiting the star talents that Kansas City can throw at you? That's any team that you have to face. Can you not let at least one dominate the entire game and keep them manageable throughout? For the Chiefs, the Bills have evolved their offense. I said it during our segment when it came to betting. Their offense has evolved from not just Stephon Diggs. They are multifaceted like the Chiefs are now. You can throw to any one of four guys, I think, that could burn you at any given time between Sanders, Davis, Knox, and, of course, Stephon Diggs. And that run game, I think, is the extra piece to it. If you can establish a run, have your targets wide open at any given time, kind of play a Chief style where it's like burn you at any piece that I can throw to. That's how I've got it. And that's how we're going to end it, folks, with our divisional round of 4th and 4. Thanks for tuning in for this season. We got a few more rounds coming up. Championship round next week. And then we're going to have an awesome show, by the way. We have a Super Bowl show with Belly Up that we're going to be doing. Bunch of personalities. We'll have more details. We'll save that for next week, giving you a bit of a rundown. We'll leave on a tease. How about that? Give you something to think about for next week. But guys, thanks for tuning in. See you later.